You're not imagining it. That INFJ in your life, the one who seems to read your mind, predict your next move, or call you out on habits you didn't even realize you had, is part of a personality type that's as fascinating as it is polarizing. INFJs, known as the advocates in the Myers-Briggs world, are celebrated for their empathy, intuition, and idealism. But let's cut through the fluff. Not everyone's a fan. In fact, some people find INFJs downright unbearable. Why? The reasons are stranger and more nuanced than you might think. Buckle up as we dive deep into the hidden quirks of this personality type that can leave others feeling irritated, judged, or just plain exhausted. 1. They're psychic level observant, and it's creepy. INFJs don't just listen, they absorb every detail. Imagine telling an INFJ you're fine after a rough day. While most people would take that at face value, an INFJ will dissect your tone, notice the way your smile doesn't reach your eyes, and remember how you nervously tapped your pen during the conversation. They pick up on micro-expressions, subtle shifts in body language, and even the words you avoid using. This hyper-observant nature can feel invasive, like having a mental X-ray machine pointed at you 24/7. It's no wonder some people find it unsettling. It's hard to relax around someone who notices the sweat on your palms during a handshake or the half-second delay in your answer to a simple question. What makes this trait even stranger is that INFJs often don't realize they're doing it. Their brains are wired to connect patterns and predict outcomes, which means they're subconsciously analyzing everything. For example, if you mention you're thinking of quitting your job, an INFJ might suddenly bring up articles about career changes or recommend a life coach. Not because they're nosy, but because their intuition flagged your comment as a cry for help. To others, though, this can come off as overstepping or even manipulative. It's like having a friend who's always 3 steps ahead of you, ready to ambush you with solutions to problems you didn't know you had. And let's talk about the uncomfortable truths. INFJs don't just see through facades, they expose them. They'll gently, or bluntly, point out the toxic friend you've been defending, the career path you're settling for, or the self-sabotaging habits you've ignored for years. While their intentions are rooted in care, their delivery often lacks tact. To an INFJ, honesty is kindness, but to everyone else, it can feel like getting a surprise root canal when you just wanted a quick chat. The result? People walk away feeling judged, even if the INFJ's goal was to help. 2. Their idealism feels like a lecture. INFJs don't do casual. Every conversation, project, or relationship becomes a mission to make the world better. Let's say you're planning a weekend getaway with an INFJ. Instead of brainstorming fun destinations, they'll suggest a volunteer trip to build schools in a rural village. Or if you're venting about a lazy coworker, they'll pivot the conversation to workplace ethics and systemic issues in corporate culture. Their minds are wired for depth and purpose, which is inspiring, until you're just trying to unwind and they're turning a Netflix binge into a debate about the moral implications of reality TV. This idealism often masks a secret judgmental streak. INFJs have a rigid internal compass about how things should be. If you show up late to dinner, they'll see it as a sign of disrespect, not just bad time management. If you cancel plans last minute, they'll interpret it as a lack of commitment to the relationship. They rarely voice these judgments outright, but their silence speaks volumes. That slight frown, the way they suddenly become overly polite, or the fact that they forgot to invite you to their next gathering, it all adds up. Living with an INFJ can feel like being graded on a secret report card where you never know the rules. Worse, their high standards aren't just for others, they're hardest on themselves. An INFJ might spend hours agonizing over a text message to ensure it's perfect, or beat themselves up for not volunteering enough. This self-imposed pressure often spills over into their relationships. They'll expect you to match their level of effort, passion, or integrity, and when you don't, because let's face it, most people won't, they'll retreat into disappointment. It's like dating a philosopher who's constantly disappointed that the world isn't as enlightened as they are. 3. They're emotional sponges, and it's exhausting. INFJs don't just empathize, they absorb emotions like a sponge. Walk into a room stressed, and an INFJ will instantly mirror your anxiety. Share a sad story, and they'll feel your pain as if it's their own. While this makes them incredible listeners, it also means their mood is tied to the people around them. If you're having a bad day, don't be surprised if the INFJ in your life becomes unusually quiet or starts asking probing questions about your childhood traumas. They can't help it. Their brains are hardwired to fixate on emotional undercurrents. The downside: INFJs often blame others for their emotional roller coasters. Forgot to text them back? They'll assume you're angry with them and spiral into self-doubt. Didn't laugh at their joke? They'll spend hours analyzing whether they offended you. This hypersensitivity can strain relationships, especially with people who prefer to keep things light. You might find yourself walking on eggshells, afraid that a casual comment will trigger a deep, existential conversation you're not ready to have. Then there's their compulsive need to fix everything. Vent about a bad day at work, and an INFJ will launch into a 10-step plan to revolutionize your career, complete with book recommendations and a spreadsheet. While their intentions are golden, not everyone wants solutions. Sometimes people just want to rant. To the INFJ, though, listening without acting feels pointless. This mismatch can leave both parties frustrated. You feel steamrolled, and they feel unappreciated for their help. 4. They're masters of the guilt trip. INFJs hate confrontation, but they're experts at passive-aggressive exits. When hurt, they won't yell or argue, they'll vanish. Known as the INFJ door slam. This tactic involves cutting someone off completely, often without explanation. One day you're close friends. The next, they've ghosted you, unfollowed you on social media, and act like you're a stranger. It's emotional ghosting with a side of moral superiority, leaving you scrambling to figure out what you did wrong. Their martyr complex doesn't help. INFJs will bend over backward to help others, often sacrificing their own needs. They'll cancel plans to babysit your dog, stay up all night editing your resume, or lend you money they can't afford to spare. But here's the catch. They expect you to notice their sacrifices and reciprocate without being asked. When you don't, because you're not a mind reader, they'll drop hints like, "I guess I'll just handle everything myself," or "Don't worry about me, I'm used to it." It's generosity with strings attached, and it leaves others feeling indebted and guilty. Even their kindness can feel heavy. An INFJ might spend weeks planning a heartfelt gift for your birthday, but if you don't react with tearful gratitude, they'll take it personally. Their love language is often acts of service. But when those acts come with unspoken expectations, it creates a toxic cycle of resentment. 5. They're walking contradictions. INFJs crave deep connections, but panic when things get too real. They'll spend hours bonding with you over shared dreams, then vanish for weeks without a word. They want honesty but crumble if you're too blunt. They'll plan a future with you in vivid detail, but hesitate to label the relationship. Trying to understand an INFJ is like solving a Rubik's Cube in the dark. Just when you think you've got a handle on them, they shift again. Their self-image as misunderstood doesn't help. INFJs often lean into their rarity. They're the rarest Myers-Briggs type, as a badge of honor. They'll casually mention how no one gets them, or post cryptic quotes about loneliness on social media. While this might start as a cry for connection, it can push people away. After the third late-night text about their cursed depth of feeling, even the most patient friend might start rolling their eyes. Their contradictions extend to their values. INFJs preach acceptance, but struggle with imperfections. They advocate for self-care, but burn themselves out helping others. They demand authenticity, but hide their true selves to avoid judgment. It's exhausting trying to keep up with their ever-shifting rules, and many people eventually throw their hands up and walk away. Conclusion. So, should you avoid INFJs? Here's the truth. INFJs aren't trying to be difficult. Their intensity, idealism, and emotional radar stem from a genuine desire to connect and make a difference. But like a strong spice, their traits can overwhelm in large doses. If you've clashed with an INFJ, it's likely because their greatest strengths, insight, empathy, passion, are dialed up to extremes. The solution? Boundaries. INFJs need space to recharge. You need space to breathe. Gently call them out when they're overanalyzing your tone of voice, and don't take their door slams personally. Recognize that their advice, however unsolicited, comes from a place of care. And if you're close to an INFJ, reassure them often. They thrive on knowing they're appreciated. Love them or loathe them, INFJs are unforgettable. Behind their cryptic silences and midnight poetry lies someone who cares deeply, fights fiercely for what's right, and sees the world in ways most can't. So, still think INFJs are unbearable? Or could they be the allies you never knew you needed? Either way, next time you meet one, you'll know exactly what you're in for. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find a way to meet in the middle.